Hey everyone, we are going to be making a Pittsburgh Steelers granny square. So to get started, we're going to need to have acrylic yarn size 4 in all of the colors of the logo, as well as a crochet hook. I use 5mm, a darning needle, a stitch marker, and a pair of scissors. So to start off, we are going to be making a granny square for our background. If you already have a preferred solid granny square you enjoy making, go ahead and do that and then skip ahead. If you'd like to see how I did it, here we go. So we're going to start with a slip knot, tighten that to our hook, and then we will chain 4. So there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, and there's 4. So now we're going to be working in that first chain that we made, that first chain. So when we're working everything into the first chain, this is basically bypassing the magic ring. I don't personally like to do magic rings. You are also able to do that if you'd like. So we will be putting our first double crochet into that first chain. So there is our first double. And then we're going to need 2 more double crochets into that same hole, that same first chain. If you're struggling with finding that same first chain every time, don't be afraid to grab that stitch marker and mark it to make it easier for you. So once we have those 2 more double crochets, that will be 3 in total. So we're now going to do a treble crochet into that same exact hole again. Here's our treble crochet, and that makes our first corner. So now we are going to be doing another side, and that is going to be 3 double crochets total. So there's 1, our second double crochet, and then our third double crochet. And now that we've done those 3, we're going to treble crochet. So there is another one of our corners. And now we're back to a side. So that's going to be another 3 double crochets. Things are probably getting pretty crowded, so don't be afraid to move around those stitches with your hands to make room. So there's 1 double crochet. There's 2 double crochets. And then there is the third double crochet. So now we are at yet another corner. You can see that's starting to shape up, so let's do a treble crochet. And then we are back to a side. So 3 double crochets to finish this up. So there's 1. There's 2. And then there's 3. So now, stretching it all out, you can start to see the start of that square shape here. So then to finish it off, we are going to need to do a slip stitch into the very top of that chain that we made. So we're going to have to feel around for it. It may be a little complicated, so move that around, see if you can get it right, and then we're going to make that slip stitch to finish off that round. And from there, we're ready for our next round. So we are going to chain 3 to start that off, and that will act as like the mock corner. So treat that as if that's one of those treble crochets, and then we're going to go into double crochets. So in that same hole where we just made our treble crochet, we are going to add 2 double crochets. Those 2 double crochets are part of that corner. So from there, once we finish those 2, there they are, we are then going to be making 3 double crochets along the side. So there's 1, there's 2 double crochets, and then a 3rd double crochet. And then the next stitch that you have left should be that corner stitch from previously. And the way that this sequence is going to work is it's going to be 2 double crochets, a treble crochet, and then 2 double crochets all in that same corner stitch. So 2 double crochets, and then that treble crochet, and then finish it off in that same V. We are going to finish it off with 2 more double crochets. So now that corner is complete. You can see it starting to make that corner there, and now we're off to the side again. So the side will be those 3 more double crochets. So we're going to do 1. You may need to move it around to find that first stitch due to how crowded your corner was. So there's 1 double crochet. There's 2. And then there's 3. Now we are back to our corner sequence. So we should have that corner from before. We're going to be doing our double crochet, another double in the same hole, then that treble crochet, followed by, now we are back to our side. So that's going to be 3 double crochets to complete our next side. And now with that 3rd double crochet, we are back to our corner. So we're going to double crochet 2 into that same stitch. There's 1, there's 2. And then we are going to treble crochet. Followed by 2 more double crochets in that same stitch to finish that corner. And you can see now we are off to our final side. So 3 more double crochets. There's 1. There's 2 double crochets. And our 3rd one in the next stitch. And now you can see we are almost back, but we do need to finish the last of that corner. So we're going to be putting 2 double crochets in the slip stitch from the previous row. So you should see that remaining there. It might be a bit of a tight fit. And we're going to do 1 double crochet and 2. And since this finishes off the round, we're now going to be looking at the chain that we made to start this round. And we're going to be looking for that top chain, and we're going to be making our slip stitch into that top chain. So feel around for it. Black yarn is a bit tricky. There we go. And slip stitch that through. Come on. Again, only moderately tricky. Don't get too frustrated. And that completes that. So we have another round to do. So we are going to start it off the same way by chaining 3. And from there, we need those 2 double crochets in that same stitch. If you're really having trouble finding that same stitch, you can also go to the next one and then start to work in the first stitch of your side there. Totally up to you. It is your craft. So let's finish off those 2 double crochets. And once we finish those 2 double crochets here, it is time to start our side. So this side, this time we are going to be making 7 double crochets. So we should have 7 stitches to go. So we're going to double crochet 1, 2 double crochets, 3 double crochets, 4 double crochets. And there's our 5th one. 6. And 7. And now we should be back to our corner from our previous row. So it's time for our corner sequence, which is 2 double crochets into that stitch, followed by a treble crochet, again in that same stitch. And then we're going to finish it off. See, I'm having a little bit of trouble. Finish it off with 2 double crochets, again, all in that same stitch. So there is that complete first corner of this round, and we are back to another side, which will again be that 7 double crochets along the side. So we're going to keep continuing this process all the way around with doing those 7 double crochets along the side, followed by that corner sequence of double crochet, 2 double crochets, a treble crochet, and 2 double crochets in that corner stitch, and then you'll be back to your side. Once you finish your final side, that's when it's time to work those double crochets into that slip stitch from the previous row to finish off that last corner. And once we slip stitch, we will be starting all over again with a new row, which will be 3 chains. So now that we're back, this will be our final row for what's needed for our example piece. So we are going to start with double crocheting those 2 where we did our chains. And this time for our side will be 11 double crochets. So for this entire round, it's going to be very similar to the last 2 rounds. We are instead just doing 11 double crochets for that side. Same exact corner sequence of 2 double crochets, a treble crochet, and 2 double crochets in that same stitch. So I'll meet you at the end. This time when we get to the end, we are still going to finish our 2 double crochets into that slip stitch from the previous row to finish our corner. And same thing with our slip stitch into the top of our chain. This time when we do our slip stitch, we won't be continuing on to do more rows. You can of course keep going on if you'd like to, but we are only going to chain 1. And from there, we can cut a small yarn tail for weaving in, and then we can pull away, tighten up, and take a quick look. Perfect. Now that we have our background, it's time to move on to the logo. So we will need our white yarn for this, and we're going to want to start it very similarly with a slip knot. And then we will use our hook to tighten it to our hook here. So we're going to make a slip knot and tighten it to our hook here. And instead of making a magic ring, I am actually going to chain 2 and work into that first chain. Of course, if you prefer to do magic rings, feel free to do that. So we are going to make a single crochet stitch into that first chain there. And once we do that, I like to mark that stitch just so I know where our starting point was. I lost a nail, ignore that. And then we are going to make 7 more single crochet stitches for a total of 8 in that same exact chain that we just made that first one. So there's 2 total, that is. There's our third total of 8 single crochet stitches. And our fourth. And we got our 5th single crochet stitch. And there's 6. And there's 7. And there's 8. That completes our first round. And we're ready to move on to the next. And we will be working in the round for this. So we're going to move our stitch marker and put our first stitch in that same V that our stitch marker was in to start our second row. And I'm going to put that stitch marker back in place once I finish it to mark that that is our first stitch of our new row. So for our second row, we will be doing 8 increases for a total of 16 stitches. So what that means is 2 single crochet, an increase is 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So we just did 1, so I just completed another one in that same hole where we made our first crochet stitch. And now we are going to do 2 in the next one as well. So there's 1 and 2 single crochets. Next one, 1 single crochet and 2 single crochets in that same stitch, and all the way around 8 times for a total of 16 stitches. Once we're all the way around, just double count your stitches and make sure you came to the right number, which should be 16. And then we are ready for our third row. And our third row will be the same. We're going to want to start our row in the same stitch where our stitch marker was. That'll be our first stitch. We'll mark that. And this row will be one single crochet followed by one increase. And that pattern will happen 8 times for a total of 24. So we're going to have that first single crochet stitch. And now we'll be moving on to the next stitch for our increase, which is just 2 single crochets in the same stitch. And we'll continue on like that. So next up would be a single crochet, and then an increase. And we'll continue on like that for this entire row. Now at the end of this row, we are ready for our fourth row. So we're going to start the same way by creating our first stitch of the row and marking it. And this row is going to be kind of similar again, but this time there will be 2 single crochet stitches and then an increase. And that pattern will go on 8 times for a total of 32 stitches. So we're going to start with our first single crochet stitch, mark that, and then we are going to have our next single crochet stitch, and then we can go on to our increase, and now the pattern restarts with a single crochet, another single crochet, and then an increase. And we'll do that all the way around. And I will meet you at the end of this row where at the very last increase, we'll be switching over to our gray yarn to finish off the border. So this is how I personally do a color change at the moment, but do however you like, however you were taught. With 2 loops on my hook halfway through my last stitch for that last increase, I'm going to put my stuff down. I'm going to grab my gray yarn. I'm going to cut a white yarn tail and secure that with one of my fingers back here just to pull it taut, keep it tight. And then I will grab my gray yarn, loop it onto my hook, and pull it through while still you can see I'm like securing that white yarn tail with my middle finger on my left hand. And then I'm going to secure both of those yarn tails, both white and gray, behind my hook hand and just make sure pull them tight if things got loose. And then I'm going to grab the new working gray yarn tail. We don't really need our stitch marker. Hold on. Gray yarn tail. And now I will be finding our next stitch and starting to, I do like to pull my yarn tails over my hook while I do these, just so that securing them while I'm crocheting will make a single crochet stitch. So from there, we're going to be going all the way around in a similar sequence. This time it's 3 single crochet stitches and then 1 increase. So there is the second. And again, when I do my third, you'll see me pull those yarn tails over my hook to kind of secure them as I go. You can also weave them in if you'd like. So there's 3 single crochets with the gray, and now we're going to be doing an increase. Pull those yarn tails over. And we're going to work all the way around. And as we get back around, you'll notice I didn't use a stitch marker just because we can see visually where the gray meets back up again. We are going to work ourselves all the way around, and then we're going to add one last stitch in the same hole that our first stitch was made with the gray. And what this will do is it'll just lighten up the vision of, the jogging that happens when you're working in a spiral, and it kind of completes it a little bit. So then we're going to chain one and fasten off. You'll notice I did not chain one there. Don't be like me. Chain one and then fasten off. Cut a long yarn tail for sewing. I like to make sure it's about 3 times the length of the circumference of the circle. And then you are going to pull that yarn free, and then we will tighten up. Now you'll notice since I didn't do that one chain, it's kind of pulling a little funky. I noticed I did something weird. So what I'm going to do is thread my needle. Feel free to do this as well, since you will be needing to do the next part with a threaded needle. So I'm just going to quickly work my needle in and out of my piece just to secure it a little better before we start sewing. If you also did not chain one like I did, feel free to do this as well. Okay, now we are ready to sew our piece onto our granny square. So position it how you'd like. You can also use a smaller crochet hook. You can use needles to keep things in place. And behind the piece, written through just the granny square, we are just going to anchor it first. And now we are going to go all the way around in and out of each stitch to secure it to our granny square. In through the front and then up through the back. And I will meet you at the end. So once we get to the end, you're going to want to weave in your ends just to secure this into place. Sometimes I even like to tie it to other yarn tails that I've had. It is up to you, however you feel like securing it. Now that that's secure, we can start embroidering these little stars. So we'll thread our needle with the yellow yarn first. It is also very difficult to thread a needle with fake nails. So, pro tip, don't wear them. So, typically, how I like to do these stars is I try to look one stitch away from the center and one stitch away from the gray border. So, you'll see me coming out that hole that's right above the center hole. And I'm going to go just as far enough until I have like a little yarn tail left. And then I'm just going to secure that with my finger and just hold it into place. And then I'm going to go in that hole right under, about 2 holes away from that gray color. And pull that through, pull it tight. And then from there, we're going to want one away on either side of that. So I found the hole that was one away to the left, pull through, and then one away to the right. And then to make that star just that plus sign right now, just a little thicker, I'm going to do that same sequence. So from the bottom up to the top. And then we will be going side to side. I will typically go over this twice, maybe even 3 times, so that there's enough yarn to make the shape that we want, have it stick out a little bit, manipulate it the way that we want. So once we have our plus sign looking the way that we want it, it's time to start connecting all the edges to create a more squarish shape star. So to do this, I'm going to go through one of the corners and I'm going to connect it to the next corner next to it. And I'm going to do that for all of our corners. I like to pinch and manipulate it as I go just to make sure that the shape is doing what I want. I know how many pass-throughs I might want to do. And there we go. We're about looking good here. And once you get to the end, I try to make sure that I end where my first yarn tail from the original pull through was, because what I'm going to do is cut off this excess yarn real quick. I am going to secure this by tying those 2 ends together. And typically I will double or even triple knot it before getting rid of some of this excess yarn. The reason it's good to get rid of some of this excess yarn right now versus later is the back of this is going to start getting really busy as we start doing the next 2 stars. So once we have that done, it's time to move on. So we will be doing the red and blue stars in the same exact way. Again, looking for one away from the center and one hole away from the gray in order to make that first line of that star there. So I'll let you guys go through that on your own, or you can follow along here, and we will meet back up at the end. So now we're at the end. We're tying off our last star, our blue star here, to complete our piece. And there you have it. We are all done with our Pittsburgh Steelers granny square. Make sure you keep coming back as we finish off the rest of the NFL logos.